everyone, and welcome to No Offseason, presented by eBay. I'm Zena.
I'm Sabreena Merchant.
And I'm Ben Pickman.
And today on the show, the start of college basketball season is right around the corner. Literally, November 3rd, y'all. From powerhouse programs reloading with new stars to up-and-coming teams looking to crash the rankings this season promises some fresh storylines, which it definitely needs because a lot of the stars are now in the W. Don't worry, they're replenishing. There's going to be a lot of unexpected twists you won't be ready for. But we're going to make sure you are, because we're going to dive into some of the burning questions shaping the year ahead. Which teams are built for a deep March run? Which freshmen could take the game by storm? And who's challenging the reigning teams at the top? But first, y'all got to go do your jobs. And I got to do my jobs. We're going to do a little bit of housekeeping real quick, okay? One, if you are not already subscribed to this show, please go ahead and do it. And while you're at it, drop us a rating. Also, send us a question. We're actually gearing up for some mailbag episodes. We want to make sure we know what's on your mind and we can answer those questions. So if you got CBA on the mind, college hoops on the mind, whatever it is, drop us a line. And on our socials, NoOffseason at theathletic.com, which is our email. And then you can check out the show notes for some more info.
There's also, Zena, a link online where people can submit questions, but you mentioned it. You talk about audience members, listeners doing their jobs. Zena, you have a new job that I think you should tell people about, The Athletic Show. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. I am on a new show at The Athletic that will be on Amazon Fire Stick. So if you don't have a Fire Stick, go get you one. But we're basically going into some of the stories that, if you're not already talking about it and you've got questions about it and you want to go deeper, those are the stories. Rather than having some of the headline-y type of stuff and just giving our quick takes or hot takes on stuff, we come in and we have the best newsroom in the world and we get to go deeper on these topics because all of you guys are already doing the research. You're on the streets, you're talking to folks, and it allows us to kind of talk to those topics a little bit deeper. And so, yeah, it's me. It's Robert Mays, head of the athletic football show at The Athletic, as well as Jason Goff. If you're in Chicago, you're very familiar with his coverage of the Bulls and Chicago sports teams at large. But yeah, I'm really excited. It'll be live every Saturday on Amazon Fire.
Congrats, Zena.
Congrats, Zena.
Thanks, guys. That's enough about me. Let's get down to business, y'all. We do have some coaching news popping off in the W. Ben, last week you told us if one of these hires happen, it's going to create the domino effect, and boom, first domino falls. You recently reported on the expected head coach hire for the Toronto Tempo. Let us know. What's the scoop?
Yeah, I mean, again, continuing with this theme of new jobs, Sandy Brondello, the former head coach of the New York Liberty, she is going to have a new job next season in Toronto, taking the Toronto Tempo's head coaching job, according to sources that I have talked with. Now, Sandy Brondello is a proven winner in the WNBA, right? She has won 2 WNBA championships. She is the winningest head coach in both the histories of the Phoenix Mercury and the New York Liberty, her prior 2 head coaching stops. And what is so interesting is that Sandy Brondello was a candidate for a number of other positions as well, a number of other openings, right? In Seattle, in Dallas, and she elects to go with the Toronto job despite them not having any players on their roster, right? Despite what could have been in those situations, she goes to a totally blank slate, to an opportunity to build up a foundation from scratch, to work with a first-year or first-time general manager in Monica Wright-Rogers, who is also a former player, and to build something collaboratively with that front office and really shape the trajectory of this franchise for years to come. Now, the news is still not official. We haven't heard from Sandy directly, but you have to look at it as her kind of wanting that fresh start and wanting that collaboration with someone, wanting to build something. I have to imagine that that was a big incentive for her as she looks to her next chapter in her coaching career.
You
One
think
of the really
about
cool
the
parts
available
about
jobs in the WNBA, right? We've got Seattle. Obviously, New York would not be a consideration for Sandy Brondello. But I think, having talked to people around the league, the Dallas job really feels like the most exciting because you get to coach Paige Beckers for however long, coaching Paige Beckers like that. That should, I think, be the most exciting thing for any WNBA coach who's looking for a new job. And yet, what Ben was saying about that partnership, you listen to what Jonathan Kolb said at his press conference after the dismissal of Sandy Brondello, and just it didn't seem like the two of them were quite in alignment on what they wanted the future of the New York Liberty to look like. And if you're Sandy Brondello, you have your pick of the litter, right? Like, you decide you want to go somewhere, and the chatter we got was they would hire you if Sandy Brondello wanted to go there. So it seems to me that this was really important to her, right? Like Ben mentioned, the only former players who are both coach and GM at any WNBA team right now is going to be in Toronto with Monica Wright-Rogers and Sandy Brondello. There's got to be some sort of familiarity there just in terms of how they see the game, how they want the Toronto tempo to look going forward. And apparently that and living in Canada were more exciting than the opportunity to coach Paige Bueckers.
And the funny part was, I'm happy you brought up the player-coach duo. I did not realize that would be the only one active in the WNBA, which is pretty cool to see. But also, I was thinking maybe Toronto because the fresh slate.
And speaking of fresh slates, Zena, the Dallas Wings are working towards a deal to hire Jose Fernandez, the longtime head coach at the University of South Florida, as their next head coach. Now, we should say that while Fernandez is going to be a first-time WNBA head coach, he has been head coach for more than 2 decades at USF since 2000. He is the winningest coach in that program's history. He's made 10 NCAA tournament appearances. He's also coached 7 WNBA draft picks, most notably Courtney Williams. So Curt Miller, their GM, is taking a different tack with this decision than he did a year ago when he was making his first head coach hire as the Wings GM. A year ago, Dallas hired Chris Koklanis, who was a longtime WNBA assistant coach, to be their head coach. And it was Chris's first shot to be a head coach. So in this search, as I previously reported, Zena, they've looked for experience. Experienced head coaches in the WNBA, in the NBA or G League, or in the college ranks. And Jose Fernandez checks that box, certainly. He was also even a finalist for the Wings coaching job last year before they went with Chris Koklanis. So he inherits this job that now has a lot of pressure also behind it because you have Paige Bueckers, who is a near unanimous Rookie of the Year coming off a stellar first season. You also have a ton of cap space. You also have a new practice facility that's opening next spring, and you have a new arena that they're moving into in 2 years. So a lot more eyeballs, a lot more pressure with this job, and they now have a more experienced coach to lead them. Now, we just have 2 openings left. What it means for Seattle is a little more uncertain. I mean, we reported that Sonia Rahman, the New York Liberty assistant coach this past year, Breon January of the Indiana Fever, those are 2 known candidates in that search as well. Those would be first-time head coaches if they were to get that job in Seattle. I still think the Seattle job, too, is a pretty appealing job. We just don't exactly know what that roster is going to look like to the same degree, right? Because, yes, you have someone like Dominique Malanga, who is that young centerpiece to build around, but what happens with Nneka Ogwumike? What happens with Skylar? What do they do with Brittany Sykes or Erica Wheeler? There's just a lot of questions there that surround, and I guess we'll have to wait and see there as well.
Well, I mean, there's about as many questions in Seattle as there are in Toronto, right? Like, you have literally no players in Toronto. And I mean, I feel a little like I buried the lead. You get the opportunity to coach Dominique Malanga in Seattle, which is not quite Paige Bueckers, but like, there are some people who believe that Dominique Malanga is going to be a better player than Paige. I could see it happening. It's obviously not the same eyeballs in terms of the marketability and the type of stardom that Paige Bueckers has just because she, built her star in the United States versus in France. But I think the types of questions that exist on the roster are kind of like just a constant throughout all of these jobs because everybody's a free agent, right? Like, we've been talking about that ad nauseum. And you have to believe if you're a coach coming in, you have a little bit of contact with the general manager to be like, hey, what's the direction we're going? Are we trying to build around Dom? Are we, giving it one more run with this veteran core? So yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing about these coaching decisions is that there's a lot of uncertainty wherever you choose to go.
Yeah, the cohesion between the GM in Golden State, Ohemi Yanin, alongside Natalie Nakase in choosing the personnel, that was huge. And so I'm imagining any of these new coaches, especially in this kind of wild, wild west of the free agency, are going to want to have that same level of cohesion with their GM. And Sandy Brondello potentially made a choice that's going to help her out. And it's going to be very interesting to see what other coaches that are being considered do with their GMs. Mo money, mo
other
problems.
Coaches, real quick. It's interesting that one of the former head coaches that we've heard a lot in this cycle is Latricia Trammell. So the Toronto job going to Sandy is just an interesting wrinkle into what happens with her potential candidacy after she, I thought did a great job her first year in Dallas. Injuries completely wrecked that second season. And then a lot of the Sparks have credited their second half turnaround to LT coming off as a consultant during the second half of their season.
Absolutely. And I love what Latricia Trammell did for, I don't even know if it was, maybe you guys know, I don't want to get too deep into this, but was it a defense or offensive perspective? It felt like it was a personnel thing that Latricia Trammell was able to come in and kind of inject her know-how into the Sparks.
From what I understand, it was just a lot more structure. She was the only person on the staff with the
Okay.
WNBA coaching experience, because you have Mike Neighbors and Lynn Roberts coming in from college, Janelle Robinson just fresh out of being a player. So just a little more institutional know-how on how the league works.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's what I felt. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and shift on over to check in on our recurring segment, Deal or No Deal. And just to be clear, so far, no deal. But there are some new developments. And Ben, Sabreena, you guys contributed to a piece about this earlier this week. NBA commissioner, and I'm fascinated that I keep saying NBA commissioner being injected into this conversation, but NBA commissioner Adam Silver made an appearance on NBC's Today Show where he said that WNBA players will get a quote-unquote big increase in salaries in the new CBA, but he also made some pretty eye-popping comments about revenue sharing. Actually, it's not a share, right, Ben? You've been on top of this. Break it down for us.
Yeah, that's, the general framework for Adam Silver's comments. And, it was supposed to be this celebratory day. That's the Today Show appearance you mentioned, Zena, was there to mark the NBA going back to NBC and the start of the NBA season on Tuesday. And it did end up sparking this entire news cycle in the WNBA, because what followed after Adam Silver's comments, in which he reframed a question about salary increases and revenue sharing, highlighting that, yes, they would get big increases, but people should be focusing on that and not as much on the revenue sharing component. That then sparked a significant rebuke from Terry Jackson, the executive director of the WNBPA, where she basically called out Adam Silver and said, quote, Adam Silver said it himself on behalf of the WNBA, share isn't the word, it's not in their vocabulary. And really what this back and forth gets down to, or goes down to, is that yes, both sides seemingly agree about the importance of increasing player salaries in the next collective bargaining agreement. We have seen the league repeatedly say, and Adam Silver said it himself, that there will be big increases. But the question is, how do you arrive at that number? How do you arrive at whatever that big increase will be? And so the WNBPA, they are proposing a salary framework that is tied very much to the WNBA business, in which salaries are linked to a percentage of the revenue generated by the league. Player salaries would also significantly increase under their proposed framework, but again, it would be tied to the business. Meanwhile, the WNBA, they're proposing a framework, from what we understand, that is very similar to what is currently in the collective bargaining agreement, which is basically a fixed salary cap with an additional revenue sharing mechanism, depending on if certain revenue targets are met or exceeded, right? So again, we'll talk about this more going forward. We've talked about it before, but the WNBA, their salary cap is fixed into the collective bargaining agreement, and then they have this additional revenue sharing potential. That is very different than the NBA, which uses something called basketball-related income, BRI, to help inform and set their salary cap. Two different structures, and that idea of structure is what this clash is over.
It's really important that when we talk about this, it lays out both elements that you just said. Salary, but also how that salary grows. And if that salary is fixed or capped. And that's the difference here that the players are really trying to change from the last CBA. And it is something that's important too, is that at the time, it made sense. In the 2020 season, in the 2021 season, it made sense. But this rapid growth has rendered this system really unfair for the players. And that's what they're looking at, looking to change. So overall, still no deal. But again, we'll keep you guys posted on everything going on with that conversation. Okay, on the other side of this break, burning questions to answer as the college basketball season gets underway. Don't go anywhere. All right, guys, as we approach the college basketball season, anticipation is building amongst you all, fans, players, and analysts alike, okay? There's some fresh talent, some new storylines that are coming into the space. Some teams have been reshuffling their lineups. Coaching strategies are evolving. Mo money, mo problems. More viewership, mo problems. There's more to be seen in the NCAA space, just like we've been seeing in the WNBA space. So there's a lot of excitement around this season, but also a lot of unpredictability. It's not going to be the same old teams that are going to be at the top, I think, and especially when it comes to the storylines. I feel like we've been talking about some of these players for so long because COVID, right? They were in college for a long time as well. But now there's an opportunity here for a little bit of a passing of the torch in terms of the storylines. So that is a part of our set of our burning questions. Just a heads up, this is not our big predictions pod. That will hit your feeds in a couple weeks. But these are just some of the questions that are on the top of our minds, right, as we head into November. So Ben, Sabreena, let's start off with the powerhouse and the champions of last season, UConn. Paige Bueckers is gone, but that doesn't mean America's sweetheart, Azzi Fudd, America's potential best player, Sarah Strong, KK Arnold, and the rest of their dominant talent are back, as well as some new recruits and Sarah Williams, this particular transfer I'm thinking about. But the question is, can any team catch up with UConn this year?
Well, I like the framing of this question because, yes, Connecticut was the national champion, but I'd be hard-pressed to argue that they were the powerhouse of the entire last season because they sort of built to get, to where they were in March and April. They were obviously the very best team during the postseason, but this was a different kind of UConn team in which they had to figure out who they were going to be and sort of peak at the exact right time. And I only say all of that to say that I think the powerhouse of last season was UCLA. And that is the number one team I'm thinking about who could potentially contend with UConn to win a national title this year, because they were ranked number one longer than any other team during the regular season last year. And they bring back a lot of that core. This is a very old UCLA team. Basically, 7 of their 8 rotation players will be gone from the Bruins next season. So it is a one and done chance for UCLA to figure it out. You've got Lauren Betts, returning All-American, who's a preseason All-American, probably preseason Big Ten Player of the Year, arguably the best center in the country, depending on how you want to characterize Sarah Strong's position. You've got Kiki Rice. You've got Charlize Ledger-Walker, who, last we saw her was leading Washington State to a Pac-12 title, and hasn't really played since then because of an ACL tear. You've got Gianna Neepkins, another former Pac-12 transfer who brings exactly the kind of shooting and playmaking you'd want around a big center like Lauren Betts. You've still got Gabriella Jaquez. You've still got, Tamia Gardner with the shooting. Sienna Betts, the one non-senior rotation player on UCLA, top 2 recruit in the country, who's going to be Lauren's backup, basically, or play next to her as a high-low 4-5 combination. So there's just a lot of talent, a lot more experience on this team than in years past because they have the know-how of having gone to the Final Four last year, how exactly they fell short. Against this particular UConn team, they fell very short against this particular UConn team. But it was very much like the lights were too bright for them last year, and you cannot use that excuse again this year. Now they are Big Ten champions. They are, a Final Four team. They have everything that you need as a stepping stone to get to that national title point. And, if they're going to challenge UConn, this would be the year to do it.
Ooh, there is a difference between a regular season powerhouse and
Absolutely.
a postseason powerhouse. And that's exactly the difference between UCLA and UConn. Now, Ben, there was also, another team that was in that championship game that looks very different. This coming into this season, and that's South Carolina. You already know that Chloe Kitts has torn her ACL, so she won't be available for this team. But there was a lot of other talent, including a powerhouse scorer coming from Florida State and Tanai Latson. Give us a little bit of breakdowns of, the other teams around the mix, that whether it's South Carolina, looking at TCU, looking at some of these other teams, Notre Dame's still in that mix. What's up with some of the other teams that might give them a run for their money?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the next 2 teams are 2 other SEC teams. And you mentioned one of them right off the top, Zena, and that is South Carolina, who, you said it, they're losing a lot of players heading into this season. Not only is it Chloe Kitts going down with an injury, but it's Bree Hall, it's Sanaya Fagan, it's Tahina Paopao, all going to the WNBA. It's Ashlyn Watkins, who went down with an ACL tear last season, who is going to miss this entire season as well. It's Mylasia Fulwiley, a once star recruit, star player for the South Carolina Gamecocks, having transferred to LSU now. So there is a lot of change. A lot, to me, is first and foremost predicated on the success of Joyce Edwards, who was South Carolina's star freshman a season ago. And Joyce Edwards was their leading scorer last year, averaging just under 13 points per game. But she was this reserve player last year. She started just 1 game. She averaged just 21.3 minutes per game last season and kind of was this superstar utility forward who showed so many bright flashes, especially in the NCAA tournament, but we're still kind of waiting to see her blossom, and so much of how this roster is constructed this season is set up for her to blossom. Then you mentioned Tanaya Latson, Zena, who, I've still stuck it in my head that yes, she is one of, if not the best scorers in the country. And I once had a WNBA personnel person say that she's just an advantage player every time out on the court. Yes, she might only be, like 5'8", 5'9", but her ability to just create offense instantly is such an advantage for her in any situation. So that is a huge boost for them. The other name to watch is Medina Okot, who transfers in from Mississippi State. She has a 6'10" wingspan, a nearly 9-foot standing reach. She certainly has improvement.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty big.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Certainly room to grow for her just in terms of post-up opportunities. And I think, we saw at Mississippi State, I think she can improve as a just kind of catching drop-off passes. But having that kind of size and physical frame, she is another potential WNBA prospect. Like Okada, that's a huge gain for them as well.
I think the other team that you were going to mention is the one I really wanted you to talk about, so I left them out specifically, LSU. I feel like they've got some transfers as well, no?
I was going to say, you said 2 SEC teams. I thought the other one was going to be Texas, the other one that made the Final Four, right?
Oh, obviously. What am I thinking? Of course, Madison's still there, Okay, actually, Ben, where were you going to go with this?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I'm curious
I am
now.
going to go with the Texas Longhorns. That is correct
Okay,
here.
all right.
They were the other SEC team that, to me, I think has real national title potential right off the bat. And that is because Rory Harmon is back. It seems like she's been in college forever, but she is back. And Madison Booker, one of the most versatile, potentially most effective, efficient players in the country, also back for her junior season. Texas is 46-4 in games that both Rory Harmon and Madison Booker have played. They've had back-to-back 30-plus win seasons. We saw in the NCAA tournament that they also had some young players who were able to come in and make an impact. And look, Madison Booker has just racked up accolade after accolade throughout her first 2 college seasons. She's been both the Big 12 Player of the Year, the SEC Player of the Year. She's been an All-American. We've seen her game take massive strides. Last year, she was a much-improved three-point shooter. I know over the offseason, the summer, it feels weird to say that because we're so used in the WN context to say winter, but over the summer, in the college context, she worked a lot on her defense and, specifically with Team USA, didn't have to be a lead scorer. So if she continues to take the strides that I think some people expect and project, look out. They also have one of the best freshmen in the country coming in Aaliyah Crump. So we'll see. Texas is the place I was going to go, though LSU, Zena, it's a totally fair call out. Pretty good as well.
I'm always going to be scared about Texas's 3-point shooting. We know that was a problem when they got deep into the tournament. You can't only have offense that runs in the paint. It's great, but they got to be able to spread it out and diversify. LSU's got some big size coming in. Kate Koval, of course, transferring down to Notre Dame. Flau'jae's still there. And particularly, I'm going to shout out Flau'jae's media picture. I don't know if you guys notice her earring perfectly hangs, and it's a 4. It's like whoever was behind the scenes in the camera, shout out to you. I love that. All right, let's move on to the freshmen.
Modern day college athlete. That is a modern day college athlete. I don't think when you were playing, Zena, what was your media day picture? Did you have did you ever get your number hanging down in an earring?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I look dry and dusty in all of my media pictures. Maybe a little lip gloss on, and that's the extent of it. But no, all the women are looking good this season. I'm very excited about it. And there's some particular women that are getting their first media day pictures, and that's the freshmen. Of course, coming into the space. I'm excited about some of these. Okay, so I got to ask you guys, who are the top recruits that are supposed to shake up the game this year?
Yeah, well, at the risk of being an entire homer, I think Jazzy Davidson, number 1 on the list
Yes.
At USC. You might see
being
her
a
listed
homer.
as...
The whole country knows this. Come on.
I think the top 2 of the top 3 recruits are both from LA, so it's really not my fault. It's just what happened.
There you go. Thank you.
You might see her listed as Jasmine Davidson, but this is Jazzy, another JuJu reincarnate at USC. And without JuJu Watkins here, this is a player who good, tall, 6'1", 6'2" wing who can do a little bit of everything with the ball. Really dynamic at the Nike Hoop Summit last year. Not last year, I guess earlier this season in April, after the Final Fours when they have, Team USA versus Team World. And Jazzy Davidson was very clearly the best player on the court, just her ability to get to any spot. Looked more athletic, more capable of, just really smooth with the ball in her hands. If you remember what JuJu did 2 years ago at USC, just taking the world by storm, taking over that USC team that had a lot of complementary players, but not really a star with the ball in her hands. That's what you can expect Jazzy Davidson to do this season. And it's probably too much to put that expectation on her, considering what a freshman year Watkins had. It was pretty historic, but I don't think that anyone in Southern California would be surprised if Jazzy was able to put together a similar performance this year. Admittedly, the surrounding talent still different. We'll get to that in a second. But when you talk about top freshmen and people who are going to have the opportunity to do a lot just because of the context around her, I think she is number one on that list.
Just the field being open for her, right? Because JuJu's out, allows us to see her. And I mean, I imagine she would have probably found a way to start anyways, but she has, the floor is hers. The stage is set for her to be able to take over. And that is what is so exciting. I saw her in the McDonald's All-American game, and her, Grace Knox, I was just like, okay, all right. Like these players are playing with confidence that we've seen lately, because these kids are coming in like they've been in pros for so many years, right? But it just again, it's the effortlessness of their game that I really, really love. You talk about effortlessness, you talk about swagger, you talk about confidence, Ben. Aaliyah Chavez, whoa. She's about to redefine Oklahoma basketball, because I'm not going to lie, Oklahoma's been good, don't get me wrong, but they've been calm. They're not necessarily a flashy team. They are not necessarily, they don't posture a lot. They just play the game. Aaliyah Chavez is a highlight reel. I'm thinking Malaysia Fulwiley in Oklahoma, like very much with the handles, with the abilities. Thoughts on some of these other freshmen, but particularly Aaliyah?
She is a big one. Consensus 5-star, top 3 recruit in this class, and a significant recruit for Oklahoma, who fought off a number of the other giants in the sport, the UCLAs, the South Carolinas, the LSUs, to end up getting her commitment, which is pretty significant, because Oklahoma, while a program that, has turned itself into a perennial NCAA tournament kind of second weekend team, they're not yet of the kind of Final Four national championship level contender that so many people expect. And so you have this dynamic freshman in Aaliyah Chavez coming in. Remember, on the other end, you have Reagan Beers, who not that long ago basically put the Oregon State Beavers on her back and took them to the Elite Eight, to the precipice of the Final Four. So I think that pairing in particular is really, really appealing, especially in a system at Oklahoma where we know they love to play. They love to have high octane offense, and we know they like to shoot a lot of threes. So putting in a dynamic playmaker like Chavez is super, super appealing. I think we should also mention, this might not necessarily be, a top 5 recruit, but another kind of top 10, top 20 recruit that is of note that's going to get a lot of attention this year is Addison Deal, Addie Deal, who is going to the Iowa Hawkeyes. And while I shout her out because she is the biggest national recruit that Iowa has had since Caitlin Clark, and she committed towards the end of Caitlin Clark's time at Iowa. And so there is a lot of hype, a lot of expectation for her coming in as a 6'1" combo guard who has a decorated kind of high school career out in California. She comes in. I think a lot of people are just curious what juice she will bring to the Iowa program as it continues to transition from the Caitlin Clark, Lisa Bluter era into the Jan Jensen and beyond era. And she very much is viewed as a centerpiece of what is now obviously one of the household names, household programs in college basketball.
It's a lot of big guard energy right now in I would say in all of basketball in general, but particularly you're thinking about some of these recruits coming in. I will say one player that being in the Bay that I'm particularly paying attention to, mainly because it could be the revival of something. Alexandra Eschmeyer, 21 in the country, getting a chance. I watched her in it wasn't a McDonald's All-American. I watched a number of clips before, but she is a 3-point shooting big. And when I mean 3-point shooting big, she's not like the rest of us that's like step into it, drag the other foot, put it up. Like she's off the bounce with it. And she's 6'5". And all I'm thinking is Cam Brink, Kiki Iriafen. Like this could revive the big the front court of Stanford. Especially with the fact that they already have a new there. They picked up some transfers in the front court as well. I'm really excited about what she could potentially do for them. But y'all already laid it out. The other big I'm thinking about, Sienna Betts. Come on. Like, you're playing with your sister. You're playing in a program that's very powerful already. I'm very curious if they're going to go with the two big lineup with them because of their familiarity with the high-low potentially. But what I don't know, maybe you guys do know, does Sienna have an outside shot?
Oh, she does. Yeah.
Okay.
You basically don't get recruited for UCLA at this point unless you have an outside shot.
If you
think
don't.
about
Exactly.
Angela Dugalich, Tamia Gardner, Sienna Betts, all of those players who will be playing next to Lauren.
Huge players.
All huge, all like
Huge
6'4",
players.
and they can all shoot. Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure. All right. Well, we are going to move forward. Just thinking about, we talked a little bit about USC's future, especially with JuJu Watkins, who tore ACL during the NCAA tournament last year. We know that she's going to miss the entire season, but we just talked a little bit about Jazzy. This LA competition here, in terms of what USC can do without a JuJu, potentially putting a lot of the onus on that team in USC on young players, will they have enough to kind of get themselves back into that national spotlight?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. Like, you think about just the void nationally that's created by JuJu being absent. I'm sure the ESPN execs had a lot of writing on JuJu Watkins, carrying the torch for college basketball this year. And USC also had a lot writing on JuJu Watkins to carry the torch. And this is a very, very different program, very different team without her. It's a very guard-heavy team without JuJu Watkins. You think about Jazzy Davidson coming in, but they also have Kennedy Smith coming back. I think their lone returning starter is Kennedy Smith. You've got Malia
which
Samuels.
We were calling JuJu 2.0, which was because they look so much alike as well on the court.
They do look alike.
So
I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Kennedy and Jazzy are going to have a fun time together on the wing. But, they have basically Malia Samuels returning, who is their just sort of like bulldog defender pest guard off the bench. And then they bring in London Jones from UCLA, another smaller guard off the bench who can shoot the lights out of the ball, who is very difficult time going up against JuJu Watkins in a different life, and now doesn't have to do that anymore. But this is just a very perimeter heavy team, right? Those are the players and they also bring in Cara Dunn from Georgia Tech, but like just not a lot of front court options. They graduate Kiki Iriafen, they graduate Rhea Marshall, they graduate Clarice Agunwafo, and those were their only 3 front court players last year. They didn't really bring anyone from the portal of note to be a front court player. Their only real options there are just freshmen who didn't play last season or international starters who've come in. And it's just, is there going to be enough balance on this roster with all of the perimeter talent? Like, I imagine you're going to see a lot of lineups with Jazzy and Kennedy both in at the 3 and 4 because there just aren't enough players to play the 4 and the 5. Like, it's going to be a lot of spacing, a lot of pace, because there just aren't options here really to throw the ball into and like let them work in the post.
All right. Well, I guess I don't think that's going to change too much. Outside of this Kiki Iriafen year last year, I do feel like there were a lot of pace and space with in JuJu's freshman year. But we'll see what happens with the USC.
True, but they also played a lot of bigs too. With like Caitlin Davis was in there, and Marshall has been a starter for 4 years, or not 4 years, but at least the last 3 years. And yeah, maybe there weren't like strict offensive options in the paint, but they also had a good like defensive anchor, I think, in the paint. And that is going to be something that they're looking to find.
That's a really great point. Oof. Okay. Whenever USC and UCLA go up against each other, that's when that is going to be particularly on display. Very curious as how all that is going to play out. But let's keep thinking about how some of these teams have changed, not just from freshmen, but particularly from transfers. And we just mentioned one, London Jones, going from UCLA to USC, but there were tons of big-time talent this past offseason, I put that in quotes, that were able to find new homes this season. So looking around the NCAA, what would you say, or who would you say you have your eyes on, and who is going to impact their new homes the most?
I mean, for me, it starts with TCU, a program that you already mentioned, Zena, and it starts with Olivia Miles, because everything at TCU this year is going to start with, end with, revolve around Olivia Miles. Much like last year, so much focused around Haley Van Lith, like Olivia Miles seemingly will be handed the car keys to run Mark Campbell's offense, which really allows her the space to operate, to get downhill, to make reads, to play out of pick and roll sets, and just create as she sees fit. And obviously, Olivia Miles has had a lot of success in the college game. She was 3-time All-ACC first team at Notre Dame. She averaged, 14, 6, and 6. She played more than 100 games there. She probably would have been a top 3 pick in the WNBA draft this past April. And instead of going pro, she elects to stay in college. She elects to transfer to the Horned Frogs, and suddenly she's in a new place with new teammates. She's one of 6 transfers, and so much is going to revolve around her. Now, she said that part of why she stayed in school was because last year, yes, she had success on the court, but she still wanted to get more consistent. She wanted to be more disciplined. And more than that, she talked about still wanting to get in better shape, both physically and mentally. You have to remember that not that long ago, she tore her ACL, and, she had to go through the post-ACL rehab process, and that saw the emergence of Hannah Hidalgo too at Notre Dame. So Olivia Miles really well positioned to have a successful year and to be, an impactful player, knowing just how much the basketball is going to be in her hands.
Yeah, there's a lot of senior, and when I say senior, I don't mean like literally seniors, but more veteran talent around her as well. I'm thinking about Donovan Hunter, Taylor Bigby, and then also thinking about transfers. Marta Suarez coming over from Cal, that 13-7. I remember she averaged at Cal for them. Like, there's a lot of great talent that's already on this team and familiarity for Olivia Miles to kind of plug into. Sabreena, I would have chosen Olivia Miles as mine as like the most impactful one. But what about you? Who are you thinking about?
Yeah, maybe not the biggest name on the transfer market. You've actually already brought her up, but just because of what she could potentially mean for a team that has very high expectations, I'm looking at Kate Koval at LSU. You think about all of the perimeter talent that the Tigers have. They've got Flau'jae Johnson coming back. They've got Michaela Williams coming back. They've got Mylasia Fulwiley coming in, right? There is a lot of scoring punch, a lot of playmaking punch on the perimeter. But this is a Kim Mulkey team. And as much as she is willing to evolve and, put more responsibility in the hands of her guards, there is going to be stuff running through the front court. And there's got to be somebody who is who's getting their job done in the paint. And, they've got Grace Knox coming in, freshman, a good forward. But like when you talk about size, when you talk about somebody who can really have a commanding presence in the paint, that to me is Kate Koval. So are we going to see more of what we saw in the first half of her senior or freshman season at Notre Dame, where she was starting, where she was, I think doing a good job of scoring off, just like finishing off of what her guards gave her and doing a good job of defending, sort of fell out of the rotation as the, Maddie Westfeld got healthier and they played more of Leah Tu King, right? But she has a real opportunity here at LSU with no real true centers, I think, in front of her in the rotation. Like, they could choose to go a little bit smaller and like play a couple forwards next to each other. But like, if LSU wants a true big, somebody who is going to make a presence in the paint, who you feel when you go up to take a shot as an opposing guard, who you feel when you're trying to box her out, like, that is a real opportunity for Kate Koval to have. And again, a team I think has really high expectations, even if the SEC is tremendously deep with all of those other teams we've talked about already.
Wait, can I get a real quick point on Kate Koval, or Koval? My favorite thing last year was watching, I was just looking this up as you were saying this, Sabreena. My favorite thing was watching Kate Koval go up against Sedona Prince at TCU last year. It was in that Thanksgiving tournament in the islands, and it was anything that Sedona wanted. It was tough for Kate Koval to do, and she had great footwork down on the block, and everyone's like, "Oh, look at her holding her own against what should be a 2, maybe 3-year potential, WNBA player."
Yeah, someone who's like 5-6 years older than her. Exactly.
Yeah, right. And so I was very excited about Kate Koval's year. Now that she has this opportunity at LSU, she's going to be closer to her brother, I believe, who's also at LSU. That familiarity is huge. Very excited about that too. Ben, go ahead. What about you? What are your thoughts on transfers?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to throw another SEC name to watch because, this basically could have been the SEC transfer segment. We could have rattled off names, but Cody McMahon.
I know, really, though.
It is pretty crazy, and it speaks to just how deep, the country is and how talented so many players are. But Cody McMahon transferring from Ohio State to Ole Miss drew a lot of headlines last year because she had become such a staple, a stalwart of that Ohio State program, getting off to such a successful start as a freshman, right? You think back to it, she's averaging 15 points per game. She's shooting 50+% from the field. I want to say it was her freshman year in which they knocked off UConn, right? And snapped that, seemingly decades-long UConn streak in the Sweet 16. Like, the Ohio State press was suffocating, and Cody McMahon was just such an offensive force, a player you can feel, as Sabreena said, on the offensive end. But seemingly we saw her offensive game kind of stall out a little bit over the last couple years. She did improve as a three-point shooter, but we saw her broader field goal percentage dip, and she didn't take the leap that I think a lot of people thought, and so she transfers down to Ole Miss. This will now be her senior year, and she also, not only is this a program that, much like some of the others we've talked about, is ripe with talent, but is looking to really make the leap into Final Four quality contention. Cody McMahon has a lot to play for personally, knowing that this is a wide open WNBA draft class, and she stands to really surge up that class if she has a more efficient, a more effective year on both ends of the floor. So she is another name to certainly watch as this college season gets underway.
I like the Cody name a lot. I think Cody's just like an SEC player. You think about her body, her physicality, like she just makes so much more sense to me in this conference than she did in the Big Ten. Not that she wasn't obviously productive at Ohio State, but like she just feels and looks like an SEC player. And I think her brand of basketball is going to be very well suited at Ole Miss. Just so we don't forget the ACC entirely, though, I want to throw one out here. Camille Pierre, I think, is a really interesting transfer at NC State.
NC State.
You know, a lot of offensive talent graduating from the Wolfpack with Isaiah James and Sinai Rivers. They had some front court issues last year, with the graduations the previous year from that Final Four team. Camille just gives them a little bit of like front court juice, somebody to actually take the attention away from the perimeter players. It's still a pretty deep perimeter group. You've got Zoe Brooks returning, Zam Jones returning, Devin Quigley. But I think that was a very surprising transfer for a lot of us, just like the date that she left Vanderbilt, how late in the portal season she ended up at NC State. But like a huge get for the Wolfpack, who really just needed something to anchor their front court rotation. And Camille is, arguably the best player they could have gotten, whether that happened in April when transfer season started or when it ended up actually happening for them.
I was going to throw in a Big Ten name to the conversation so we can continue to round out conferences. I think Yarden Garzone going from Indiana to Maryland is another name to watch, just because we know that Maryland can really be a high-octane, very efficient three-point shooting team, and Yarden Garzone is one of the best three-point shooters in the country, taking nearly 7 per game last year, shooting 41%, like instant offense just kind of being infused into Maryland, and very interesting to go interconference from one very proven program in Indiana to another in Maryland. Also a player with some WNBA aspirations, some prospects to watch out for.
What's funny about how my mind works is I was thinking I'll throw in some ACC, I'll do Maryland and NC State. And it's like, wait a second, Maryland's not ACC for a very long time.
Not ACC, right. I just, to the Camille Pierre point, I am sad that there's no more like magic of Michaela Blakes and Camille Pierre. Like those two were putting up 20 a game, both 40 combined. Like it was so much offense coming out of Vanderbilt. But yes, NC State picks up that. There's so many moves that have been made. I mean, we did touch on Tanai Latson. We talked to him about Mylasia Fulwiley, Sarah Williams leaving Wisconsin and go to UConn to bolster up that team. There's so much movement, guys. We're going to try and keep it top of mind throughout the rest of this season. But it's going to be very interesting who rises to the top in terms of their impact on the various teams. Okay, guys, we got to round it out. We've been talking for a while, and I love it. I'm getting too excited. Again, this is not our predictions pod, just thinking top of mind stuff. Let's shift to our last question, a topic that I know a lot of people are going to debate because what did you just say, Sabreena? The draft class this year is wide open. And there's an opportunity for some people to really surprise folks. Scout's going to be very busy this year. It's not going to be so simple as it was in the past few years, I think, who's going number 1, 2, et cetera. So fast forward to April 2026. Put your scout hat on. Who's going to be the number 1 pick in the next WNBA draft?
Well, let's hope it's in April of 2026, right? Like, there's a lot that has to be done before we can have a WNBA draft.
Great point. Deal or no deal.
Yeah,
facts.
But setting that aside, I think what you said, Zena, is exactly right. We've been in this long stretch of there has been no discussion really of who the number 1 pick was. It was Aaliyah Boston. It was Caitlin Clark. It was Paige Beckers. Just. You look at the draft and it's like you got number 1, your job is done. If you're at number 2, like that's where the real work starts, right? And now you can make an argument for a lot of different players, right? A bunch of them who we've mentioned on this podcast, right? If you're interested in a big, Lauren Betts, right? 6'7", you can't teach that size, right? How often do we hear you can't teach 6'7"? And she has that. She's very skilled around the basket, excellent defensive player, right? Her mobility got a lot better between I think her sophomore and her junior year, and I'm excited to see what that looks like, after another offseason of work at UCLA. Just super composed, super skilled, like obviously very productive. How could you go wrong, building your team around a player like that when bigs are so important in the WNBA? And yet, what if you're thinking a little bit more modern, a little bit more perimeter oriented? Do you want a point guard of the future in Olivia Miles, who is arguably one of the more pro-ready point guards now, even before spending this season at, Transfer Central with Mark Campbell and learning that pick and roll offense? She is awesome pull-up shooter, awesome playmaker. Like, what more could you ask for in a point guard? I mean, maybe you want more athletic
40%
type of player
from three last year too.
Exactly. Maybe you want a more athletic wing type of player. You look at what the Aces have with Jackie Young and you're like, I want that. Maybe Flau'jae Johnson is your pick, right? Somebody who can create her own shot, who has an athletic advantage over basically anybody who tries to get in front of her. Dynamite in transition, really good defender when she puts her mind to it on the perimeter. Like, I could keep naming names, but those are three that immediately come out to me as just different archetypes of what a team could want as they look towards their next era in the WNBA.
So the answer is who knows, Zena? That is really the exciting part of this season, I think, on the college basketball front and on the WNBA scouting front is it really is pretty open. I mean, again, I think the other player to watch for is Awa Pham, a 19-year-old Spaniard. I know this is a college basketball episode, but she is really the other name to watch in this conversation. Someone who runs the floor, is super athletic, a fluid athlete. She's playing in EuroLeague against, the top competition in the world. Like, don't be surprised if she is the number one pick come whenever this draft is.
We should mention she's 6'5" and as skilled as just about any guard in the NCAA. Yeah.
There you go. And I'm going to let y'all know, Ben had a very similar prediction when it came to Dom Malonga. Okay, letting us know about the international competition there of just how skilled Dominique Malonga is. And even though she had a slow start, she definitely showcased that towards the end of the season for Seattle. So, Ben, we appreciate you always keeping us up to date with the international talents and the prospects, because that's so important, especially as the game continues to expand and the WNBA becomes more and more attractive to not just NCAA prospects, but, of course, international prospects as well. So, on that note, one last question. With more people coming over that are younger, that have been playing in these pro leagues to develop their basketball talent internationally, any thoughts on folks trying to leave NCAA early or earlier, trying to reduce that age limit? Because there is a CBA being negotiated right now, and that would be where you would make that decision.
Yeah, you think about all of the talking points the WNBA has put out about how this is how things are done in the NBA. Shouldn't we have it done this way in the WNBA in terms of revenue sharing, right, and player experience and things of that nature? And yet, in the NBA, they have an age limit of 19 where you're allowed to declare for the NBA draft as a American player. And in the WNBA, if you go through the domestic system, i.e. the NCAA, you have to be 22 when you declare for the WNBA draft, or at least turn 22 the year of the draft. So that is admittedly a very big difference, 3 years. And I haven't heard literally any chatter out of WNBA players about wanting to change that minimum, because it is so beneficial for the WNBA, which has a limited number of roster spots, to limit the number of players who are allowed to be in the league. And it is beneficial for college basketball to have their players in their system for as long as possible, because you build stories and rivalries and just the narratives that develop. Like, how much more fun was it to watch Caitlin Clark go from her sophomore season where they lose, in that second round to Creighton, and then, building up to the Final Four the next year and the Final Four the year after that. You just don't get that if players can go to the draft as soon as possible. And yeah, I think it is inherently anti-labor to deny adult people the right to play in the best league in the world. But there's just so many advantages for college players, for WNBA players, that the college system exists the way it is, and you have these built-in stars before they even get to the W. And the fact that they're making money in college now makes it a lot easier to be on board with, because it's not you're denying them, all of their earning potential this early in their careers. But yeah, it's not something that I've really heard about in terms of what WNBA players' priorities are. But it's something to always have in the back of your mind, especially as we get players who are so talented and so seemingly pro-ready when they get to college, the likes of JuJu Watkins, that maybe it's a conversation we'll have further down the line when these other priorities for the WNBA have resolved themselves.
It does seem like the main point for that argument before, from an anti-labor perspective, was the money. But now that that's kind of been solved, or just quote unquote solved, or addressed through NIL, it feels as if this won't be as much of a clamor for the women's basketball players, at least. Very, very good discussion, y'all. Just to get us started, this is the tip of the iceberg of the college conversation, and we're very excited to get deeper into it as the year goes on, and to keep you posted on everything around the CBA. That is all we've got for you today. Remember, you have a job to do. That's right. Subscribe if you haven't done so. That's right. Give us a rating if you haven't done so. And the third thing is making sure you get us some questions for the mailbag, because we want to make sure, whether it's written online, as Ben mentioned, or in our mailbag episodes that are coming up, that we've got all your thoughts and we can address them. So appreciate you guys joining us for today. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you follow and subscribe there. It's not just the podcasting. We want the video as well to be appreciated. And then, of course, head on over to our partner, Yahoo Sports Hub. Got more content over there, sports.yahoo.com/women's-sports. You know, one thing I haven't encouraged you guys to do, go subscribe to The Athletic, y'all. Best newsroom in sports. It's a lot of great content. I'm learning something new every single time I open up the app, especially from these two, and Ben and Sabreena. But on behalf of The Athletic, my homies Sabreena and Ben, I'm Zena. We appreciate you listening, and we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to No Off Season. To hear more, be sure to like and subscribe. We drop new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.